The Board of Commissioners of the City of Mount Juliet will have a public hearing in City Hall, November 14, 2022 at 6:17 to consider the second item on second and final reading. It's the amend fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for fire truck replacement. If you would like to comment on replacing that fire truck or not replacing that fire truck, we would invite you to come forward to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and we're here to hear your comments. Seeing no one in the audience other than press and staff, I'm assuming it's safe to close the public hearing. With that, we'll close this public hearing and we will reconvene at 6:30 for our regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Today is November 14th, 2022. I'll hereby call the meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Mount Juliet to order. We have a quorum. All 5 of our elected officials are here. So pursuant to 62210, we can conduct the business of the City of Mount Juliet. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is to set the agenda. I have a request here at the table to add an ordinance to the agenda. I'll make a motion to add that as 11A5. Have a second. Any other questions or comments on the addition to the agenda?
I've got 11A3 is the last one I've got. Is there another?
No, it's a one at the table. It's a request to add it.
The one I've got is 11. No, I'm sorry, that's 11B3. I'm sorry, 11B3. So you're saying 11A5?
That's what you're saying.
Yes, add it
Okay.
as 11A5 at
Okay.
the end of the ordinances that are found under new business. All in favor of the addition, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We've got one addition. Any other changes to the agenda before we set it? Any moves on discussion items or anything?
Can we move the discussion items at the end up to some place a little more accommodating so that,
Do you have a suggestion? You want to do it right at the beginning of new business?
please, yes, sir.
All right. We'll move the discussion item in between what's on the agenda is 10 and 11 between unfinished business. And after the new business consent agenda, before new business, we will do the discussion item at that place.
Thank
If
you.
there's no objections to moving that. Hearing none, all in favor of the agenda as twice amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We've amended the agenda 2 times. The discussion item will be held before new business, and we've inserted 11A5 at the end of new business ordinances. And with that, I will ask for invocation and pledge of allegiance. Let's see, do we have, I see we have a fire chief, we have a chief of police. Anybody want to lead the prayer? All right, well. Chief Hambrick, if you would be willing, we would be honored.
Let's pray together. Eternal God, our Father, we come and Lord, we give you praise for all things. Lord, we thank you for this day and your blessings toward us. Lord, your word declares that your mercies are new every morning, and how great is your faithfulness. Lord, we ask that you would just be present here in this meeting. We ask for wisdom, Lord, knowledge, Lord, clarity. We ask that we would just go about doing your business by your will, by your divine hand. Wish your blessings upon this city and our state, Lord, and in this country, Lord, and even our world. Heavenly Father, we just come humbly. Lord, as we enter into a holiday season, Lord, we ask that you would just give us protection. Heavenly Father, that you would guard us. Lord, we pray for safety. Lord, we pray for just coming together, Lord, to acknowledge you. And so, Lord, at this hour, we just give you thanks for all things. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Let us stand together. Please join me in repeating the pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. The next item is approval of minutes, and we have one from our regular meeting on October 24th at 6:30. Is there a motion? Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any questions, comments? All in favor of the minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are passed. Next item is citizen comments. We reserve the right to terminate any comments if your remarks become abusive to other citizens, employees, or fellow board members. The board's under no obligation to respond to questions from the floor, but we do ask you to keep your comments on topic with city items, and we'll be happy to allow you to speak on anything. You'll be recognized for 3 minutes pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 220 of City Code. If you'd come forward and give your name and address for the record, we'll get you recognized. There's a mad dash. All right, seeing none, we will close citizen comments, move to commissioner reports and comments. With that, I'll recognize Commissioner Mullally.
Saturday night, I don't really have a report, but Saturday night I attended the Dancing with Mt Juliet Stars, which was a great event, and I really enjoyed it. And Chief Luffman was the #1 pick for the audience, and Commissioner Hefner was awesome too, and so was our city judge, and then we had 3 others, and business owners, and Amy Breedwell of who runs Mt Juliet for Hope, which was the purpose of the event, held by Dynamic Ballroom. And it was just so much fun to watch that, because I always watch the TV show. So I was just really excited to go, and I really enjoyed it. Everybody just did great. It was a great dinner, and the food was catered by Barrel House, the new restaurant, Barrel House. Yeah, the new restaurant that's coming, and which is where Catch 22 was. So anyway, it was just a great evening, and I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed it and appreciate everyone's involvement. So that's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Up next, I'll recognize our Vice Mayor, Justice.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I would like to say congratulations to Commissioners Bill Trevette and Commissioner Jennifer Mullally. It was a hard-fought campaign that y'all had. I was so proud to see both of you victorious as you fought so hard to, it's tough. It's a tough time of year. So, but I do want to say, yeah, good job. I can tell both of you were sweating. I get it. Congratulations also to my son, Kevin, and his new wife, Kimberly Justice. They were married Friday on Veterans Day, officiated by my friend and our chief here in Mt Juliet, Chief James Hambrick. I was very proud to have him officiating, which is the second son that I've had. They're twins, and so he's now done both of the ceremonies. So very proud to have Chief Hambrick up there. Very proud to have a new daughter-in-law in the family. Beautiful young lady. Wanted to announce, and Mr. Beasley brought me a piece of paper. He is so efficient. I really like that. Piece of paper over here saying, hey, don't forget, what is this, stupid? Hey, stupid, don't forget. No, he didn't say that. I'm just kidding. December 8th at WA Wright, I'll be having a forum for my district, for District 1, just talking about some of the issues that we've got that we're facing and dealing with as we move forward, the new businesses and such that will be coming up in my district. And so that'll be at WA Wright. And I want to thank Mt Juliet High School as well for allowing us to do one over at Mt Juliet High School on November the 3rd for that part of my district. So I want to invite everybody to come out, and I think, is that 6 to 9 or 6 to 8? It starts at 6, and the crowd will dictate how long we stay. If it's after 9 o'clock, then we'll still talk in the parking lot if we need to. It's not a problem. We'll also say thank you to Kevin Costley, Commissioner Kevin Costley, who's also one of the coaches over at the Mt Juliet High School, for the invitation. I was able to go on Veterans Day to the program that they put together in the gym for Veterans Day, and it just shows how cool our community is. I'm not real sure that's the appropriate word. It was just so neat to see those kids and the choir led by Miss Sandy Elliott. She's a fixture, I think, getting ready to retire from Mt Juliet High School. Been there for so many years and done such a great job teaching the chorus over there, choir. The band did all 5 branches of the military, did their theme songs, and did an excellent job. It sounded like something you would hear professionally. It's how good it was. The whole program was amazing. And so I want to thank Mt Juliet High School for doing that. My alma mater, by the way. And I also understand Del Webb did an excellent program. Those that are able to attend over there, they always do a great program. Should be commended for what they do over there and the patriotism that Del Webb shows. Want to make sure that everybody understands Christmas is coming. If any of you forget that, just get ready. Thanksgiving first, obviously, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I don't think we have a meeting between now and then, do we? So this will be the only opportunity we have to give tell everybody happy Thanksgiving and make sure and love on your family during that period of time. Also want to make sure that you know that Christmas is coming and we want to shop local. Remember, we've got a lot of name brand stores up here, but we also have a lot of mom and pop stores, especially in my district, in District 1, which is everything that direction pretty much, on the retail side, and Commissioner Trevette's district going down Scotts Hollow Hill towards Hermitage. We've got a brand new addition to my district, which is Third Coast Salt. Third Coast Salt is a day spa, and they offer numerous services, massages, and skincare and things of that nature. And it is, I mean, when you walk in there, it's like walking into a breath of fresh air. It is that amazing when you walk into that place. The people that work there are wonderful. You can get gift cards at that location. You know, make sure if you go up there, you see Sherry. She will tell you she is the grateful owner of Third Coast, and she's amazing. Her and her family are Mt Juliet residents, and so we want to make sure if we can to support the Mt Juliet mom and pops and well, every business in Mt Juliet. That's how we keep the operations going. It's not on property tax. We don't have a big property tax in Mt Juliet. So we need places like Third Coast Salt. They're at 103A Sunset Drive near the new Barrel House restaurant that's going to be opening soon. Also, I mean, we have some others, and I'm going to mention them. I don't have any problem throwing out these. The Sisters Whimsy is one of the, again, I call it a mom and pop. It's actually friend and friend that have ran this place for many, many years, and they do an excellent job providing our community with everything that they can. And I use them regularly to fulfill all the Christmas obligations that we have with our families. So we've got some big things coming down in my district. It's been a long time coming. We're going to take over the city of Mt Juliet, Providence. Y'all can just take a break. Pep Boys, Big O Tire, Steve Griffith, one of our local residents, a wonderful man, is opening a Griffith office building on Lebanon Road soon. We also have the Whataburger and the Camel Car Wash. We have the Nook, which is the down in where the old boot barn used to be many, many years ago. And we have the Mebcourt Business Center that will be coming soon, all in District 1. And we've got a lot of residential that's going to be coming to District 1. We're going to do things right. We're going to learn from the mistakes that we've made in the past and the other parts of town that we don't want to talk about anymore. And I see Mr. Robinson over there, who's a big part of the North Mt Juliet community with his establishments. Make sure you go by his businesses as well. And we have to make sure Miss Phyllis gets fed, right? Yeah. So that's my comments for tonight. And again, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, and we're looking forward to seeing you around Christmas time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll recognize Commissioner Trevette.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see if we can get the camera crew back there to transfer up the display for me. Thank you. Hopefully I can flip it over. Yeah, I know. That was nice of them. Let's see if we can get it over there now. There we go. All right. Hopefully we can get back up to the first slide. So, obviously, a Veterans Day was just the other day, and I thought, what a great opportunity for us. I was actually at my son's school, and I was actually honored enough to go up and actually had an opportunity to go meet with the vice mayor at one of the high schools, but I got mixed up and went over to the Green Hills High School by mistake, so didn't make it over there in time. But either way, I still, got an opportunity to see what was being celebrated. And we all tend to always forget about, what's being taught in our schools because we all get so busy. Me, on the other hand, I always look at all these things. So, Mt Juliet Elementary did a great job. First walking in, you get to see a a silhouette of a soldier there. And then obviously the next slide is some examples of what is Veterans Day to some of these students, as well as what's going on within our country. So, you know, it was just a great reminder of how blessed we are to live in this great country. And then 3 ways, I know I'm going to pronounce this, Agamograph, I think that's how you pronounce it. It was some really neat art, you know, as students are making this, you know, you could see it in 3 different directions, and you get to see some really cool pictures. And these were just some of the teachers, you know, like different classes, 5th grade here. Great job to 2nd grade and 1st grade. So we got Miss Billiot and Miss Spencer. Beautiful pictures. I mean, this is just our artwork from different students as they're all teaming up together. So every student had a little part of each picture here. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then, of course, this you know, some beautiful pictures of our American flag, and then our soldiers there. Great work to all the students here. And again, I put up the teachers as well as what grade they're in. And then that is actually what they shared. So thank you back there for running that. Let's see here. Coming up, you know, obviously this past week we had the Will Sellers tribute, which was obviously, for everybody that knows Mr. Sellers, he has done a lot for this city, and it was a really nice time for all the families and friends that came out to celebrate the tribute of the naming of Will Sellers Park over there in Providence. Turned out really nice. There was a lot of people that showed up in midday. So, you know, check out online pictures. They're all over the place. Coming up, we've got the ribbon cutting at Monday Park, Saturday at 10 a.m. The Cedar Creek Bridge is still to be announced. It's got some time out there. They've had to reschedule that a couple times, but looking forward to this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. Obviously, for all of us to talk about the Christmas parade that's right around the corner, the 10th at 11 a.m. So that's going to be a nice morning for all of us. And then before that is actually the Christmas tree lighting, which is the 9th at 7 p.m. But I would like to mention also, that's not on my little list from my awesome a team member back there, which is the you know, the competition for all the lightings. So that's obviously that's on the website. So for anybody that wants to you know, to be involved with the Christmas lighting this year, you know, the competition, please check out the website and you know, for the parks, and you'll be able to get on there and submit your house. So good luck to all the candidates. And Mayor, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll recognize Commissioner Hefner.
Thanks, Mayor. You know, I get my wife watches online all the time, so I'm getting a text, and she goes, look up, and I was like, well, I'm reading. She says, no, look up. So I look up, and she's actually here. So she snuck in the last minute. So thank my wife for coming out. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dancing with the Stars. What an absolute honor and blast that I had participating in that event. I can't give enough thanks to Cammie and Mark Weber, who own Dynamic Ballroom. They co-sponsored the event. The 6 participants were given 10 free lessons. So that takes a lot of time out of their busy schedule, right? Because they're normally charging people for those lessons. So big shout out to Cammie and Mark. Cammie was my professional dancer, and she made me actually look really good. So want to thank her. Also want to thank Barrel House, Danny, and the owners of the Barrel House for doing the food there. Jamie Luffman. So there's a few people I actually went down a list that I reached out to participate in this, and they said no. I won't mention them by names, but a couple of them are sitting in this room. So I got down like 5 deep in my list, and I called Jamie Luffman. And I knew I was in trouble when he said yes before I can even finish the sentence. So, I mean, if you haven't seen the video, all of them are recorded. They're online, and what a great job for everybody, and what a great organization, Mt Juliet for Hope. I didn't think twice about doing it. So, and I got free lessons, and I tell people, you know, the biggest winner is my wife, because now I actually know how to dance. and I don't have to watch her dance with other people. So, anyways, Homes for the Holidays, they do that every year. They did it again. It's true. It's a true story. Homes for the Holiday, they had that this weekend, Saturday. Got an opportunity to go through there again. Uslam Jennings, who puts that on every year, she does a fantastic job. It was absolutely packed. Congratulations, Commissioner Mullally and Commissioner Trevette. Thank you for all you do and running again. Congratulations. And thank you for attending Dancing with the Stars. Very excited to see you there. So a couple other things. The deer rut is about to happen. I know you forgot to mention this in your commission report. Yeah, so just be careful. This is when bucks start getting crazy and you see them running around in the road. So just be careful at night during the day. Also, happy Thanksgiving. We're not going to be meeting, so I want to give everybody a big shout out. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a safe Thanksgiving. I know those turkey fryers are going to be blazing, so just be careful as you're dropping those hopefully not a frozen turkey into hot oil. Please read directions and do that as safely as you possibly can. And then also to shop local. We are entering the holiday season, and it is sales tax dollars that is actually the machine that drives the city. So appreciate everybody's support and shopping local. With that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, sir. With that, I'll start off on my comments here. I got another group of scouts that invited me to speak with them. So maybe we can get another group in here to lead us into the pledge at our next meeting. I want to wish, of course, Commissioner Trevette and Commissioner Mullally big congratulations on their elections. It's not certified yet, but I think it's safe to say 99%. I mean, that's running the score up. I think that's what we've learned. It's just so good job. As soon as that's certified, I think we've got swearing in planned for our next meeting. So come ready to swear in. Yes, come ready to swear in. So with that, I'll also mention the Mayor's Cup. I got to thank both schools for, putting up with us for a week as we kind of worked the kinks out on the first one there. Congratulate Mt Juliet High School on their win there at the game. All the people that worked to make that successful, our sponsors, Volunteer State Bank and R&M Printing, both went well above and beyond to make that the success it was. I'm told they was well north of 5,000 people there in attendance. So a great showing for our community here. Great sportsmanship, great game, just a lot of things. It really highlights our community as what was going on that night. And I was just happy to be a part of that and be able to enjoy the game and get to see that. Looking forward to next year for the rematch. Both those schools have gone into the playoffs, and they represent this community so well. So we're proud of them both, Mt Juliet High School and both Green Hills High School for the work and the effort they put into both those schools with a great season. And I'll add too, there is a holiday coming up soon, Thanksgiving, but the one after Thanksgiving is the one where everybody likes to go shopping. And I would encourage you myself as well to shop local here in Mt Juliet. When you are considering that special gift, spend a whole lot of money, just do it here in the city of Mt Juliet. Like Commissioner Hefner said, this community is funded primarily through property tax. Ooh, that's how we avoid property taxes, through sales tax. Our sales tax is our number one driver here in our community for us funding it. When you see the fire department, the police department, public works, the streets, the roads, bridges getting widened so you can get in and out of Providence a little easier, that's primarily brought to you by sales tax. So when you got an option out there, shop here local here in Mt Juliet, whether it's Providence, Paddocks, up and down Mt Juliet Road, Lebanon Road, wherever you want to go, just ask you to keep it here in the city of Mt Juliet. And with that, I'll recognize our city manager, Mr. Kenny Martin.
Mayor, I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody that's here tonight and watching from home. Congratulations, Commissioner Mullally, Commissioner Trivett, on your elections. And I also want to thank the commission. A perfect example is the Dance with the Stars here in Mt Juliet. It shows you a perfect example of not only your commissioner getting out there and sort of putting themselves out there. It takes a lot of guts to get out on the dance floor, and dance and sort of put it out there, for the community. And it shows you the business owners did it, and it's for a great cause. So thank you to the commission for what you do to go above and beyond, not only for staff, but for the community as a whole and for the citizens. And it shows you, like you were talking about, supporting the local businesses. Until you get to know these people that put all this money in to open up these businesses, especially the moms and pops, and put all this sacrifice and work and hoping that somebody comes once you turn that open sign and they come and patronize your business. So I appreciate you all doing that. But kudos for participating, Commissioner. I was one of the ones that got invited. I said, it takes a lot of guts to get out there and dance in front of a lot of other people. And sometimes my bashfulness makes it hard for me to do something like that. So I was one of the ones that chickened out. But exactly, kudos to those that did it, because we got a chance to watch it. And I want to give a shout out too to Mr. Beasley for being such a good MC. He did a great job. And I tell you, I had a lot of comments from people. And if you watched some of the comments on Facebook and other things, people really enjoyed it. I think people like seeing that. And with society and all that's going on, we need that kind of stuff. So thank you for doing that. It was a true blast. I'd also like to thank Dale Webb and the Dale Webb's veterans for having us out, our elected officials and staff that got to participate in that last week. They always do such a great job. It puts things into perspective of why we're here and how blessed we are to have people that's done the thing and made the sacrifices for us so that we can do the things that we do here and do things like Dancing with the Stars. So that was an awesome event. Thank them for having us. A lot of the other stuff that everybody already talked about, new business and things of that nature. So just thank you so much for what you all do, and hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And with that, we will move into the business portion of the agenda. I will start with unfinished business consent agenda. And this meeting, it only has one item, so you will not have to listen to me read 35 of them like the last meeting. So the item is 8.1, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance 2022-32 to appropriate funds to repair a fire truck damaged in a collision. Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on fixing the fire truck? All in favor of repairing the fire truck, please raise your hand and signify an aye. Aye. Any opposed? 8-1 carries. I guess, Chief, the fire truck will get to be repaired. Under unfinished business, we have 9A1, a resolution to approve the purchase and sales agreement for a property located at 620 Clemens Road, being approximately 24.7 acres for $2.970000, which is $2.9 million, for the Public Works Engineering Department and other future uses by the City of Mount Juliet, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement.
Motion.
Have a motion and a second. The item's on the floor. Any questions or comments? City manager, your sponsor, you want to explain this?
Absolutely, yes. And thank you, Commissioner, for any consideration. At the end of the day, we're going to support whatever commission decides. Mr. Barlow and I and some other folks have been looking to expand, the Public Works property for some time, and the commission was gracious enough to help us with that not too long ago, buy some property that we're building a new city garage on. But with all the growth that we've got coming into the city, pieces of equipment, more apparatuses, we had an opportunity to buy some contiguous property beside it. They were asking quite a bit more than this at first. We did an appraisal. We got the owner to come down on the property. What I was thinking, there's a little bit of more of a pitch here from just Public Works property, is possibility some parks property and taking some existing property that we have on Clemens Road, and possibly after meeting with the family, if this goes through, selling that property and then moving it across the street. But we just don't know if that would happen or not. So that's where it came about. And Mr. Barlow may be able to speak to it a little bit more than I can.
Yeah, certainly. And so I think the idea of this, we put some money in the budget for land acquisition. And as Kenny stated, we have about maxed out our current property we have on Clemens Road. We're in need of some more shop space for sewer and streets and traffic. And so while our garage is almost finished, that was really the immediate need, I'll say. And so contiguous property is always the best to maximize the use of the land. And so we explored property to the south that the church owns. We looked at some land swaps, trying to figure out maybe some ways that we could maximize the city's dollars on that. There were some hurdles there that really prevented that from being an option. So that was off the table. And so we looked at this, went through the process on it, and we were looking for a portion of it, but the seller was very willing to sell the entire piece of the property. And so while we felt like that wasn't necessarily what we first had in mind, looking at future growth for the city of Mount Juliet, this piece of land is almost central to at least our urban growth boundary, if not the current city limits. From a location standpoint, it's about halfway between Mount Juliet Road and Golden Bear Gateway. It's about halfway between the interstate and Lebanon Road. And so it's in a very, very good location where we can strategically service the city. And so, which is why we picked our prior property on that roadway as well. So as it came about, we felt like, well, we ended up getting a better per acre land deal on the total. And we felt like this is something that could be of service to this generation as well as the next generation. With the pace of land development that we've had in the city, we felt like this is a good use, and it reserves, I guess, the use for the remainder of it for whatever city portions we might want. Parkland would be a fantastic thing. There could be any number of different options I think that we can do there. So it's not just for my department. I think this is a good use for the city as a whole.
All right. And this was on the agenda last meeting, got pulled?
It was. And so we were working through the appraisal process on that and trying to sort out what that was going to look like on a per acre. As it was, we ended up being able to save, I think it was about $900,000.
So could we do that again if we move it to the next agenda?
I wish.
Worth a try.
If we could, I would.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Mullally?
I have a question. So it's total like almost 25 acres. So after you get through building the public works portion of it, how much is left for possible parks?
We had only put in the budget about 8 to 10 acres. And so that was really, we felt like 8 to 10 acres would be able to service our public works department for, the next 20 years. And so I felt like the remaining portion of it. So if you say that the remaining 2/3 of it would be a good use for that potential. I will note that East Hill Street will extend to Golden Bear Gateway at some point in time in the future, where we would have had to either buy right of way or something along those lines. So it's encompassed within those property areas. So there's some good potential there for roadway connectivity as well.
You have questions or comments?
Yeah, I have.
Vice Mayor?
Didn't we have something on the last budget? And we maybe we pulled the amount down or made it less than what it originally was in regard to land acquisition purchase?
We had 1.6 million budgeted for land.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already budgeted. This would just add to that 1.5 to add to that appropriation.
And I'm curious, so that 1.5 that we got to, where is that coming from? Because everything that we've got in our budget currently has something assigned to it, correct?
Yes, it
So
would come from
where would-
reserves.
I'm sorry,
It would come from reserves, available fund balance.
but we don't have any reserves because it's attached to something. Every penny we've got is attached to a project or something, correct?
Correct. But then we have an amount in fund balance that's available to use for items like this.
So we've got a 1.5 million in a rainy day fund is what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay, so what
Much
would
more
that do
than
to
that.
our rainy day fund if we take out 1.5 million?
We have about 40 million available.
Okay, you keep saying that, but we've got, every time that we have money come in, we attach it to a project or we attach it to
But
something.
these are savings. We haven't spent all that's basically savings over the years. So you've developed this balance. So yes, we budget revenues and expenditures, but you've had more revenue than you've had expenditures over the years, which has added to this balance available to spend. That's where this extra is coming from.
Okay, all right, let me, maybe, just curious here. when we had the budget this year, right?
Yes.
There is an amount of money that is put towards projects and land acquisition and things of that nature.
Yes.
All right. And then anything that is included in there, we have, when we took that money in, we attached it to, maybe it was a widening project on Mt Juliet Road, or it was a widening over here at Golden Bear, or putting lights up somewhere. But everything that we've got is attached to something.
Not everything that we have is attached to an appropriation. this
And
year.
anything that was not attached to an appropriation probably would have been set up in the rainy day fund. Is that correct?
It's just, it's in an available fund balance. It's
So is it,
basically that your savings account, you can look at it as a savings account. So you have your budgeted revenue, and then you have your expenditures, and you still have an amount that's left that's available to spend.
okay.
And that's where these extra reserves come out of. Like the money for this would come out of those savings that you've had over the years.
So we've got savings that were unidentified and just sitting there.
It's
Doing
just from
nothing.
years of being very frugal and budgeting your revenues conservatively and your expenditures conservatively when your revenues have come in higher than your expenditures. So it just adds to the savings that are available to spend when you have big projects coming down the path. And that's what this is. This is just pulling from a savings that has been built up over the years.
That we didn't know we had.
It's in the budget
As what?
as
Well,
fund balance.
As fund balance?
Yes.
Okay. And then we had I won't call it a rainy day fund, is for lack of a better way of,
You can call it, that's pretty much the same thing.
it was the same thing.
Yeah, it's just available fund balance. That's what we call it.
All right.
So yeah,
Okay. So we've got, how many acres is being used over there now?
We have, I think
Right,
it's
12?
Toby, do you recall? 4.5 is what we currently have.
I thought we had gotten 12 acres total when we got all that.
Mm-mm, just 4.5.
4.5 acres.
That's what we're using today.
So when we bought that, it was only 4.5 acres.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
We
So-
had wanted more at the time, but it was the most readily available piece.
So then we're going to wind up with 30 acres over there.
Once it's all combined, yes.
All right. I have a problem with this price, actually. I mean, we're talking about rock and dirt on that land over there. Well, I'm sorry, there's cedar trees too. And that's about all there is over there. And that's probably all you can do over there. And so for park property, unless you want to go over and start cutting cedars, and that's going to be tough. We identified, and I told Kenny about it, 10 acres that somebody's given us for parks. We spent $2.3 million on some park. No, actually, it wasn't that much. It was $975,000 on parks. And we got part of that back. So but I get to looking at this price at $125,000 an acre. And I don't see that this is negotiated by somebody that is in real estate, because if they had it, this probably would be somewhere closer to $50,000 to $60,000 an acre rather than $125 an acre. It's unzoned, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it?
I think it's industrial in the county.
I have to look at it and see. Regardless,
I'll find it.
$125,000 an acre for rock and dirt is a little pricey. So I'm not comfortable with this as it stands right now at 2.9 million. I think maybe some more discussion needs to go into sitting down and having a chat with the people that own it now.
We did go through the appraisal process on it. The appraisal for the whole did come back lower. And so there was negotiation through that process. And
So what was the appraisal?
it was $150,000 an acre was the original appraisal.
And who did that appraisal?
That was Parrish.
Okay. I probably would want to talk to him about what he compared that to and have a conversation with him, because Russell does a good job on appraisals.
Mhm. Yeah, he was the one most responsive. We reached out to others, wanted to try to get a review appraisal, and we reached out to, what was the other one? Yeah, Ted Boozer. He was 60 days out before getting to something, and we reached out to, what was the other one? They didn't. Middle Tennessee Appraisal. They did not respond.
But before we did this, I'd feel more comfortable if we had to look at that appraisal and had had a conversation with him about that prior to, and maybe take another opportunity and talk to the owner of the property. I personally would like to do that. I'm uncomfortable with $150,000 or $125,000 an acre for dirt and rock and cedar trees.
I will note that West Wilson Utility District has had a stockpile permit for fill material there over the years.
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
They've had a stockpile permit for fill material over the years. Any excess rock fill material they've been placing there on that site. The pad there that they've built out already is a pretty good sized usable pad. It's actually where we stored our tornado debris. So when the tornado came through, we had two very large piles of vegetation there. And so we had that. And then there was extra room beyond that. From looking at the grades on the site, it actually works out pretty well. The fall is pretty good. It's much, much better than what we currently have. So I think as far as the total slope across the site, I'm thinking it's somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. So, I mean, a typical parking lot, you want it about 5%, so max. And so I think from what we've looked at from a preliminary layout type standpoint and the grading work that would have to go into it, there's a little bit right at Clemens Road that's next to our current property. That's really the majority of the grading. There's really, from what we've looked at, we've gone through preliminary review of environmental features. We are getting an environmental, which is part of the subject of the purchase agreement is an environmental study, a phase 1 study. But our initial review of it, there's no streams on the property. There's no wetlands on the property. And due to the existing fill material, we can verify that it has withheld the test of time and a lot of loads.
Commissioner Hefner?
Thanks, Mayor. I noticed that you budgeted last year to acquire 8 acres.
Mm-hmm.
So what's changed? Now we need 24. That's 3 times what was originally budgeted for. So
It's not a need. I would say as far as what we were looking at, it's really just the seller offering the whole property. And so from what we looked at for the price, if we were to purchase 8 acres, then at some point in time we needed additional land to go and purchase any more, would likely be the same property if it wasn't already developed out. And so it wasn't necessarily public works use per se for the remainder of that. It was more of an opportunity to acquire the remainder of it at a lower per acre cost that we could use as a city for other uses. We could subdivide off eventually and recuperate our costs in the future. I think recuperate maybe and then some in the future, especially as East Hill goes through. You might have some prime corner lots there to sell. I don't know what the uses would be, but I can imagine mixed use. I think this does have a future land use of mixed use. So there's some opportunities, I think, for that in the future. Not necessarily saying that we need it now. Put the budget in there for what I felt that we needed. And so it's not a need, but it's an opportunity for, I think I would say, investing in our future.
okay. I mean, I like the way you think. The only concern I have with that, we own land all over the city right now that we're not using. We have 60 acres on York Road that we're not doing anything with. I know there's a shooting range out there. The police department uses part of that, and the other part we're using as a dumping ground. We have property here on the corner that we're renting out. I mean, we have real estate that we're not using as a city. We should probably look to either sell it or use it. I don't think the city needs to be in the business of doing, being a speculator on land acquisitions, especially now. Prices, I think, are coming down. So those are my concerns. One, we might be biting off more than what we actually need. And number 2, we do have some assets, some land in the city that we're currently not using or using for some other purpose other than for city. business. So I'd like to have us look into that a little bit more before we pull the trigger. We also have a police department we have to build. We purchased land, on Charlie Daniels. So where is that expense? I know we're going to eventually see some numbers associated with building the police department. I know we've been throwing around here and ideas about expanding City Hall. I'm not sure where that's at, but we buy this land and then we sit on it, and then we really, got some hard decisions to make. So once we buy that land, we've got to make a decision on what to do with it. So in the case of the police department, we know we're going to build something. We just don't know what the costs are, the numbers. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to go ahead and bite off something that we don't need at $2.9 million. That's pretty significant, regardless of how much money we have in our rainy day fund or whatever we want to call it. So my 2 cents.
Commissioner Trevette?
No, thank you, Mr. Barlow, for today's call, by the way. You did help out explain a little bit about there. Obviously, there was some questions, with the 24 acres. It sounds like, that this is going to be a better opportunity for us to be able to look back and either defer this or come back to the plate with something different. But, but again, with all the other projects that, the city does have with all the other land, that is some concerns there. Hopefully you and the vice mayor can get together and be able to see what options we have with this land or some other land that's, around the area to help support your needs with utilities. I do have a question. You're saying that you've already built, is it the pole barn or shed, and where's that being built at already?
Yeah, so what we've constructed out there so far, we've constructed the salt shed is there. We have our garage for our, vac trucks and things like that, our temperature control building for our temperature sensitive equipment.
Sure.
We have 2 large sheds for our other equipment to keep them out of the sun and rain. We also have our wash bay constructed. And then now we're about putting the finishing touches on our garage.
And this is all on the 4.5 acres that's
Mhm.
currently the city's, correct?
Yes, and we've about maxed out the level of area out there. Might could fit one more small building, but that's about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We have currently there, you said 4.5 acres,
That's correct, yes.
and we paid, if I remember right, 500,000 or 550,000 for those 4.5 acres.
Something around those lines, yes.
So it was a little bit north of 100,000 per acre.
Yes, and that would be about 3 years ago.
Yeah. So right now we're looking at just north of 120,000 an acre.
That's right.
So 3.5 years worth of real estate, and I don't know other details that go along with it. So it's not, I mean, I heard the vice mayor saying 60,000 an acre, but I don't know if we'll get anywhere close to that price on it. How much did we originally have across the street for public works?
It was 5 acres.
So it's 5 acres. So
Mhm.
we gave that 5 acres away. Then we bought 4.5 across the street.
That's right.
But this gives us an opportunity to be continuous with that.
It is. Yes. I'd say this is actually better so that we can be contiguous.
That's good. Well, I mean, I appreciate you bringing this and bringing us to the table here. 24.71 acres is definitely more than we need. But I know how many times I sit at this table and just say, I wish somebody had been a little bit more proactive on things over the years. And it's hard to go back in the past and redo things when it's not done. So anyway, I think Commissioner Mullally, did you have another comment or question?
Just one more question. You don't need the whole 24 acres, but you do need 8 acres.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So if we just bought the 8 acres, according to the owner, which you initially started with,
Mhm.
how much per acre would the price per acre change if we just bought 8 acres?
Yes, it goes up. It's $150,000 an acre. And that's lower than the appraised value. The appraisal was 156.
And so according to the map here, this pad I guess, as you call
Yeah,
it,
that's right.
that's where you would build the 8 acres,
That's correct.
and the rest of it pretty much is wooded.
Well, we would probably try to get a little bit further to the south, more contiguous with our current area.
Uh-huh.
But that retains a pretty large area for any other uses. I think it would give us options as far as laying it out. I'd say a lot of the sheds and uses like that, you can have more to the rear of the property, reserve the front for more of an office space, shop area, and maybe even for other city uses if we wanted to go that direction in the future. I did want to speak a little bit to the other properties that we have. We have the York Road property, which is, I'll say, it doesn't serve our operations well at all. Yeah. It's actually the only reason that land was purchased way back when was that was going to be a sewer treatment plant. And that was done back in the 80s. And so that, because that's a low point in the city, that was going to be done as a sewer treatment plant. Well, that part is no longer needed. However, we do utilize that area for a lot of disposal for our services, for public works services, things that maybe you might not necessarily want to have close to the public eye. As far as debris, we've staged tornado debris from the last December tornado. We have some other rock piles and things like that. I guess you could call it a boneyard. I know we've referred to that for some of the other uses in the past. And so it serves well for that purpose there. The other acquisition that we've done was the property for the EQ basin or equalization basin, which that was strictly for the sewer purposes, which was really going to end up being probably split between sewer and parks from talking with Rocky Lee. I think he's got some good uses there to where it can be a nice shared use, which is what we envisioned when we bought the property. And so, this is really just for the strategic purpose of serving the city from all of our uses. So I think it's the geographic location is the advantage here.
Yeah, and I think the York Road property is basically landlocked.
It is.
Land and creek.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments? Vice Mayor?
Mayor, what I'd like to do, the owner of the property, and this is not to take anything away from Mr. Barlow in any shape, form, or fashion, because he is doing his best to make sure his department is taken care of for many years to come. So kudos, good job there. I don't have any problem with that. And I'm glad to see you forward thinking. I wish we'd been doing that a long time ago. We wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion right now. But while you were an amazing engineer, I think maybe somebody, Mr. Marchetti or somebody else, might want to have a little conversation with Mr. Rowlett, the owner of the property, rather than putting our public works director into the position of negotiating real estate deals. But what you were talking about, the opportunity there to buy maybe a smaller tract of that land as opposed to the whole piece. Commissioner Hefner made a very good point. I mean, we're looking at building a new city hall that we don't even know the numbers on yet. So it's a little hard to predict there. Coming into a budget season here in about 6 months, we're going to have a new budget. I'm curious to see what this savings account looks like that we've got that we keep spending out of. I'm waiting for that to hit the bottom. I don't want to get there. So, we can't, is it going to get there when we come up with the police department, or is it going to get there when we come up when we want to build a new city hall? I think the more conservative approach to this is get what we need and see if we can't go back in and have a conversation with the owner of the property that we might be able to negotiate down something and work through that process. Give city manager and them an opportunity to work it down. So what I'd like to do in this particular case is what I'd like to do is defer this just one meeting. I don't think that there's a time constraint or issue. And I think that's really the only thing that's debatable at this point. So it gives us an opportunity to go back and talk to him and see if there's not something we can work out. So that would be my motion at this point, is to defer this one meeting and come back with, a yay or nay vote at the next meeting, if that's okay.
We have a motion on the table to defer one meeting by Vice Mayor Justice and a second by Commissioner Hefner. Any questions, comments on the advisement of deferral? Any concerns?
No,
Okay.
none here.
We'll vote. All in favor of deferment for one meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. So that carries a vote of 3-2. So we are deferred one meeting on 9A1. The next item up is 9B1, which is to confirm Wilson Bank and Trust as a depositor for the City of Mount Juliet Emergency Medical Services Department payments.
Motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this item?
None, please.
All right. All in favor of the item as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This carries. Next item up is a discussion item by the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. The Urban Growth Coordinating Committee has met, and they brought back a map and a plan. And I'll ask Mr. Barlow to weigh in on this if we need to, if there's any questions, or if I can't get the information right. But basically what it amounts to is we have expanded our urban growth boundaries to take into consideration our actual population of 40,000 approximate. The reason I had asked originally for this to happen was because when in 2010-11, during that time, we were anticipated to have 18,000 in 2020. The city of Lebanon was anticipated to have 40,000 residents in 2020. Obviously, they got the numbers right for the city of Lebanon, but they were somewhat lacking for us. And so the urban growth boundary for the city of Mount Juliet was actually using an 18,000 population rather than the 40 that we wound up being the largest city in the county. So when we went to the mayor and asked him, the county mayor, that is, Mayor Hutto, and asked him to reconvene, then myself, Ms. Hamblin, and the city manager, and Ms. Sheila attend those meetings, and we were able to come up with a plan that our Public Works Director, Mr. Barlow, worked through along with Ms. Hamblin, that expanded our urban growth boundary and puts us at approximately, I think, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong here, 90.5 square miles. And that puts Lebanon about 90.5 or 90.4 square miles. It's almost exactly the same amount. That being the case, there are certain things that need to be happening. And I think y'all have gotten the maps, if I'm not mistaken. Have you not?
Part of the packet.
Yeah. Okay. So there's their packet that the GNRC brought up to us, and it told what they were doing and what has happened in Wilson County over the last 10 years. So that being the case, you'll get those maps, but we have got to have a public hearing. Every entity, that being City of Mount Juliet, City of Lebanon, Watertown, and Wilson County, will be having public hearings. And those public hearings have to be held, at least one public hearing has to be held between now and February the 1st. It's a 90 days that they gave us to have that public hearing. After that, we'll have a vote of this commission. I believe actually it has to go to the Planning Commission, does it not, Andy, first? Okay, so it goes to the Planning Commission first, and then after the Planning Commission looks at it, does their approval processes, then they will send it to us for ratification. We'll bring it in, and once we've adopted it, and each one of the entities in the county, each one of the cities will adopt it, and then it will be sent to the state and will be put into their urban growth boundary plan, the state planning processes. So that's kind of the process that we're laying out, but we will be having at least one, and Mr. Beasley will be helping with that, trying to get that together, but at least one public hearing so that everybody will have an opportunity to come in and weigh in with their comments as to where we are going and how we're going to do this, and get any input, any issues, things of that nature out of the way. So Is there any questions? I hope Mr. Javette left, so I'm sorry.
Commissioner Milady?
This committee basically just determines the boundary and recommends, the extending the boundary, basically. So I know it's been discussed, and one of the initial reasons was the authority between, with development as it come in our urban growth boundary. How is that going to get resolved? I know it's kind of been talked about, because that's a really big concern.
There is an ordinance that Ms. Hamlin can probably tell more about, actually, that anything comes into our urban growth boundary, but it's not within the city of Mount Juliet. And this is something that we're working towards now. Mr. Barlow is working towards this as far as getting a contract with the people who provide waste services around us, that we would wind up getting in the urban growth boundary. We would wind up getting the first right of refusal towards providing the waste opportunities. I'm not sure whether that sounds good or not, but Andy said it was okay. So, but that's one part of the issue, because what we're trying to do is say that we want to take care of the waste disposal using our sewer system within this area, if it's feasible, if it's possible. If it's not, then the part that goes along with that is that we were looking at 1 acre lots within the urban growth boundary, but outside of the city limits, and that were not available for sewer. So that takes care of the second part of our issue. Now, there's some of this stuff to be worked out between water and wastewater group, and we're waiting on that. Am I missing anything here? Either one of you?
So if a development comes up in, for, so if the developer doesn't want to annex and that kind of thing, which is, we know, and then they go to the the county planning department, and they get approved. So then what? So is that going to take care of that? It will? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's some more conversation to go along with
Okay,
this.
right.
But I mean, that's kind of where we are right now. Some of these ideas and some of these issues are in the process of working through and working out. So there's also a plan that we're in the process of looking at, that Mr. Barlow was informed me of, that we're talking about doing a regional sewer treatment plant, actually, that would be shared with Lebanon, ourselves, and Wilson Water and Wastewater Authority, and that would help provide some relief as far as capacity goes for everybody involved, and would take away some of the area. Like, for instance, I mean, it would be more towards my district, actually, was one of the reasons I'm involved in that conversation, but would allow that waste to be transferred to another location other than going to Metro. Our contract is up in, I think, 6 years. Is that right? 7 years with Metro. And it takes some of the pressure off of us trying to renegotiate that contract also.
Okay.
Commissioner Hefner?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Commissioner Millay. I think what she was touching on is what I suggested at that first meeting I attended, and that was to allow the municipalities to control the zoning within the UGB. And I don't know where that stands. Currently, currently they have to meet our subdivision regs, which we did update recently to increase the lot sizes to a minimum of 1 acre. And there are some caveats in there for annexation and sewer requests. But where does it stand with regard to, are there any conversations taking place about the municipalities running with their own regulations, building standards, design standards within the UGB?
And that's a good question. There has been conversations. There's nothing in concrete there.
Okay.
And the Urban Growth Coordinating Committee, while we can have those conversations, I don't know, it's going to wind up being an agreement that's going to wind up being between the individual entities and the county as to how we do this. Now, Lebanon has gotten some leverage, if you would, through negotiations, and been able to work with the county in some areas. And it probably going to wind up being the same thing here, but we are headed that direction. And some of the stuff that Ms. Hamlin's been able to do and Mr. Barlow's been able to do have taken care of that. So it's not the issue that it was. I'll say that without getting into a lot of legality stuff and have Mr. Marquetti yell at me. No, it would never. Okay.
Okay.
So.
All right. Because it was the one.
The other part of BUGB, in addition to the boundaries, is working among the entities that are within this coordinating committee. It includes utilities as well as the cities, is to see what zoning and what regulations can apply.
Yeah.
And agree. Since the whole idea of urban growth is that sooner or later we will expand our city limits, and you want something within your city limits that conforms theoretically with what our city wants. So that's
Yeah.
part of what's being done within this committee.
And you'll be happy to know that we also updated the sidewalk ordinance as part of that subdivision reg. So the sidewalks have to be built within the right of way, which there were some issues with the county and sidewalks, and not allowing the sidewalks to be built into the right of way. So that's been changed. So they have to meet our subdivision regs, which now include 1 acre minimum lots and a sidewalk. So that was also updated.
Any other questions or comments?
Mm-mm.
All right. Vice Mayor, thank you for the update on
Yes,
that.
sir. Thank you.
Those are some good maps there. I think what GNRC from their presentation.
GNRC put the presentation out there, and do we have that online anywhere, or is that something that we can actually put? If we could put that online, I think would be a good
But it's in tonight,
educational tool.
it's in tonight's packet if somebody wants to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's out there if you really want that.
Now,
City manager.
I just want to make sure when we did this many, many years ago, a lot of citizens outside the corporate limits were concerned that this meant annexation. An urban growth boundary does not necessarily mean that anything's been annexed. I don't know if many of you may remember years ago, they thought we were annexing into Glayville, and that's not what this is at all. In a lot of ways, it protects not only the county residents, but the city. I want to give kudos to this commission because calling for the meeting to be held, because they're not held that often. A lot of work goes into it. Thank you, Vice Mayor and Commissioners, for what y'all have done there. Because the hope is just to clear there, get everybody on the same page. And the Bender's Ferry development is a perfect example of a development that was going to be built in the county, in our urban growth boundary, not to necessarily city standards, with more homes. So because this commission took action, that development ultimately at some point in the future would be built in the city limits, built to city standards, and improve off-site road improvements. That's a perfect example when it goes really well. So thank you.
Mayor, may I respond to that also real quick? Okay. If you wind up that you are inside of Mount Juliet's urban growth boundary, and yeah, I did say Juliet, by the way, Mount Juliet's urban growth boundary, if you do not want to be annexed, you will not be annexed. That is a state law. Okay. So those of you that you wind up throwing up and down and falling over and hurting yourself because you're writhing in pain, you don't have to be annexed. I want to make sure everybody understands that before we start getting those phone calls. This is not what this is about. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I to that point, I think probably it's safe to assume 95% of the general public doesn't know what an urban growth boundary is. And even more scarier, you could be watching online and you could be in it already.
It's also known as the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah. Right.
There've been no ill effects to this point. Commissioner Mullally.
I just want to say the PowerPoint presentation that was at the this committee meeting, which I have been to all these meetings, by the way, which I've followed it. So anyway, the PowerPoint that was presented at the last meeting by GNRC is excellent, and it is in the agenda packet, each slide of the presentation, and it covers growth estimates and things like that, which is well defined, very interesting. So I highly would recommend anyone to look over that.
There is actually, Mayor, There is actually one section that I noticed in here because they did put the growth estimates and the infrastructure estimates up to 2045.
Yeah.
And there was one section that was still red that I pointed out that there was obviously very little faith in TDOT because in 2045 it's estimated that there will still be a problem at Lebanon Road and Park Glen. so they said, "Oh, that was a map glitch," but I don't believe them. It's
Important.
Yes, sir.
And Commissioner Muddy brought it up in her comments, which remind me of that. I know that the commission and the city, because a lot of the growth that happens in the corporate limits gets blamed for a lot of the traffic, but actually one of the largest, if not the largest driving force in traffic development for the county right now is actually happening outside the corporate limits of the city, the 3 cities. So that's what's driving a lot of the traffic now. And that was highlighted in that report. So I thought that was important to note in that report. It was very interesting to learn that. A lot of the growth in the traffic comes from out in the county regions outside the corporate limits.
Point to packet page 97 for that number. And to that point, if there's any reason why we do what we do, you think about all the population projections, where you can have unincorporated, if we continue as we went, and Wilson County developed out. Wilson County, unincorporated outside of the city of Mt Juliet or Lebanon or Watertown.
185,000 people. And you think about the ability to serve from a county government that's not used to serving that level or that level of, I guess, population numbers out there to be able to service that. They're not, as no knock on them, but they're not used to the municipal level services that you get with that. That is a reason why we're doing this exercise, so that you can have these things under a municipal umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the, I guess, the unintended consequences of the no forced annexation piece was you can still have you can still have some of that development going on outside in the unincorporated areas, but it didn't really leave these counties any ability to handle urban growth with a regional, what had really initially been a more rural aspect to governing things, and it fallen under the umbrellas of the municipalities. So with that work, I mean, it's trying to do the balance between those things. It's try to handle urban type issues where you don't always have the ability to do it under certain government models. And of course, we talked a little bit tonight about the GNRC. That's the Greater Regional Nashville Council. They actually a little organization here where all of your municipalities around what we call, I guess, the collar counties around Nashville, members of that, the counties, the cities, all participate in that. It's kind of the new home of what used to be referred to the MPO. I guess it still is the MPO. They just govern the MPO, which that's where Congress dumps all the money out there they get dibbed out to all the transportation projects. So you have the transportation piece, the Aging Council falls under that. They do a lot of studies for us. Pretty good organization they got going there. And I know Mr. Barlow serves on some of those committees as well. And we appreciate his service there. And, maybe sometimes he gets to work Mt Juliet in there a little bit.
No doubt.
Any other questions or comments on these discussions before we move on to our new business portion of the agenda? All righty. Hearing nothing else, we'll move to new business. And we are on 11A1, an ordinance to rezone approximately 6.3 acres of property located along Golden Bear Gateway and Athletes Way, map 78, part of parcel 10.17 from Industrial Restricted Plan Unit Development IR PUD to Commercial Retail Center Plan Unit Development CRC PUD, and to amend the preliminary master development plan for Project Jolene. Have a motion and a second. 11A1 is on the table. Any questions, comments, or discussion on this? Ready to vote? All in favor of 11A1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries on first reading. Next item on the agenda is 11A2, an ordinance to amend Part B of the Unified Development Code of the City of Mt Juliet, Tennessee, known as the Zoning Regulation Ordinance 2001-29, adopted October 8, 2001, as amended by amending 102 General Definitions and Article 6 Commercial District Regulations, Section 6, 102, uses and structures to reduce the requirements from 20 acres to 5 acres for mixed-use sites and mixed-use buildings on properties fronting North Mount Juliet Road located in the commercial town center mixed-use development within 1/2 mile of the intersection of East-West Division and Mount Juliet Road, and revise the definition for mixed-use developments.
Motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on 11A2? Let's get Vice Mayor.
Okay, many years ago, we passed a overlay, and I'm not sure where that stands now. And my question is, would we have to rescind that to put this in place, or would this just go over top of it?
Ooh, that one may be dead, but we're going to hear from our.
I'm not sure what the status of it is, to be honest with you. So I don't know.
You guys actually passed an ordinance to make that Main Street and Village Overlay District optional.
Pull the microphone down. There you go. Talking.
So it's not required. It's an optional overlay, and it would not affect this
the
proposal
commercial
at all.
town center overlay was optional.
Mhm.
It got made
Now.
optional.
It's optional now. When Witts and Brooks Landing, I believe is the name of that development, came through, it was required, but has since not been rescinded, but it has been made optional.
Okay. All right. I just remember that happening. I wasn't sure exactly what the status or how we went over it. So what?
Yeah, lots of long nights over that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And I will just throw this in here. This is our opportunity, and we're using this as an opportunity to start increasing the density in the urban section of our city to create that downtown area that we've
Yes,
been
sir.
trying to do for.
Better to find
50
this
years.
downtown area, get more rooftops in here so we can maybe get some better options on retail, convenience, restaurants, more walkable downtown area.
Okay. There is some other areas within our city where this could be an opportunity.
I agree. I agree for sure, but I felt like this was a good start for us so we can see how it's being presented and how we're managing that. And the zoning ordinance is definitely something that can be changed. So if we feel at a later date that we need to extend this boundary, I feel like that's something that we can look at that time.
I may have actually told a fib here, but I do have an extra, one other question. The section that we deemed off limits for the retail development and redevelopment, which is the West Division around to West Caldwell in that area.
That's for transient habitation. So
I'm
no
sorry?
transient habitation. So no motel, hotel
Correct.
in that area.
That would not affect this and what we did to that property though.
They
right?
would still not be able to build a hotel or motel in that area.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure that didn't change anything there. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Mullally?
This I've struggled with since I found out it was going to be on tonight's agenda. I've really put a lot of thought in it and prayed about it. And so I'm not opposed to a downtown area. I like the idea. I think that sounds, good. And I know that's been talked about for a long time. So I'm not opposed to it. But because what this would mean also is to reduce the 20 acre down to minimum 5 acre for to allow mixed use, which includes commercial, retail, office, and also multifamily. So because of that reason, and because I have fought very hard to fight against that 20 acre reduction, and you know this because I called you today, for that reason, to be consistent, I'm going to vote against it. I don't think my vote's going to matter one way or the other, really. But because of that reason, I feel like I should be consistent and vote against this zoning amendment. So
All right.
that's all.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the 20 acre requirement on that. I mean, it's in there, and I looked at that title too, especially because it's a 5 acre reduction on that. But I look at what would look at what we're trying to accomplish on the 20 acre minimum. And, you know, for me, it was squarely aimed at RM16 and RM8. So this to me was just a different animal, but I appreciate where you're coming from it on that one. This here is looking for true mixed use here in this thing, you know, not going back to some of the stuff that we've seen under CMU that's been brought that's been disappointing by some measures. But here under CTC, really just looking in this area here to see something fresh, bring some developments back that are really going to be a mixed use on this. I'm fine with the smaller acre things here in this area of town with a 1 acre, with a half-mile limitations on it. Hopefully get a little bit more walkability in the area. I think it's something people want, and to get from point A to point B, sometimes it's going to require a little change to get there. So I'm glad this is being brought and put together. I know it's been a working process. I know, to your point, Vice Mayor, that maybe there's some other places that make sense. I think this is a good place to start and see how this unfolds for us. Anybody else? Not, we'll recognize the Vice Mayor again.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mullally, I understand where you're coming from with the consistency and being consistent outside of the urban area. If you're familiar with Metro Nashville, and God knows I want to do everything I can do to avoid their type of government, but the urban area, and where they have urban services and general services. And so they have an urban services area that actually is the more elevated, inside the city area. And then the general services district is outside of that and has been assigned to the more rural areas. What you're saying is correct. And I applaud you for trying to be consistent. I'm not going to beat you up over that at all. But I will tell you, and I'm going to sound like the little country hick rude kid that grew up in Mt Juliet. When I was growing up here, we would drive down Mt Juliet Road, and you could do 60 miles an hour and jump the railroad tracks down here, by the way, back then. We would go to Lebanon and we would talk about how cool it was that they had a square and had General Hatton in the middle of the square. You know, you go to Watertown, and although it wasn't as just defined as it was in Lebanon, but Watertown has one of the coolest downtown areas you've ever seen. The other two cities in Wilson County had these downtown areas that they identified as being, this is downtown. We never had that growing up here in Mt Juliet. We didn't have anything that looked like it. It's one of the reasons that I brought up many years ago to do the town center overlay. And we got started with, we're hoping to try and keep some of the older homes over here. That didn't work out. It wound up becoming optional because of, as the mayor put it, a lot of long hours of debate and some grinding and gnashing of teeth. We have an opportunity now to come down Mt Juliet Road and to drive into something that in this predictably defined urban area that we can call downtown. Now, there may be only 12 of us natives left that are born and raised here in Mt Juliet, but I can tell you those 12 natives would appreciate the fact that we're doing something that's going to make Mt Juliet nice, defined. We're going to have that downtown. If we could put a statue in the middle of Mt Juliet Road, I'd do it in a heartbeat. It would beat the outhouse that I put in the middle of Mt Juliet Road in 1987, by the way. But those were we enjoy that feel in the other cities in Mt Juliet. We got an opportunity to do that right here, and I don't want to waste that opportunity. And I have to applaud the Planning Commission, Ms. Hamblin, and our planning staff for giving us this opportunity. And I'm not going to do anything in the world to take it away from Mt Juliet and the people that have lived here all their lives looking for that.
Commissioner Hefner.
Yeah, I feel like I got to say something. Most of this falls in my district. Another thing too that wasn't mentioned is this also could drive some revitalization in some areas, specifically behind City Hall, that we'd like to see it refreshed. I mean, we've got duplexes back there, we've got homes that are falling down, and this would provide a nice path for those to get bulldozed and something fresh and new to take its place. So I too am anxious to have a downtown, and Andy, I'm sure you're going to put a roundabout in the middle of Mt Juliet. Right. A statue. In the middle of a roundabout. In the middle of a roundabout. Okay. No, that's another big driver for this is just revitalization. So.
One thing I would like to know, you talk about the idea of mixed use types of sites. They are a lower demand on the transportation system than just having residential over here, commercial over here. The more that we can have combined in together, the overall, you do two things. You create more opportunities for economic development, which helps our tax base we have, as we've noted before, we're a sales tax based city, creates that. But then it doesn't create the travel demand on Mt Juliet Road that you're going to see with just a major shopping center. You start getting these pockets of mixed use, walkability. That is a trip that's taken off of the road when you can walk, bike, or take a back road to get from point A to point B. And so for this, I think this is fantastic. I think from a traffic and transportation standpoint, completely supported.
Yeah, and I'll say it again. This is not impacting RM16, which is apartment zoning for apartments. This is a different animal. You have questions, comments? Ready to vote? All right, all in favor of 11A2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Got one. It carries 4-1, so we'll see it back for second reading. Next item is 11A3, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance 2022-32 to appropriate funds for the implementation of a new HR and payroll software.
Motion.
Have a motion? And a second. Any questions or comments on this? All right. All in favor of 11A3, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries on first reading. 11A4, an ordinance of the City of Mt Juliet to amend the Mt Juliet City Code, Chapter 28, Traffic and Vehicles, Article Number 7, Parking, Section 28, 193, Regulations, Parking Violations. I recognize the Vice Mayor's under his sponsorship.
Yes, sir. I think probably we all get those phone calls about, I was parked in front of my house on the street and I got a ticket. And myself and Commissioner Mullally have talked about this. I think we both agree that this is a phone call we get quite frequently. Now, one of the issues that we have learned over time is that there are signs that are out that, you're not supposed to park on the street in some locations. We also have about 20,000 new residents that, may or may not have seen these signs. So there's a lot of education that goes into this. One of the things that I have found is that it is more of an education piece. It needs to be more of an education piece than it is actually a penalization or penal circumstance. So, and I talked to Captain Chandler, and if he wants to expand on this, I think he actually chimed in and said, in the email that went back and forth, that this was a good idea. Rather than go out and trying to amend the actual ordinance to change the times or something of that nature, it gave them an opportunity for the clerk to actually establish, and they would have a database saying, okay, this is the first time that this person has been cited for this. They say they didn't know. So there's the educational process. They do have to come down and actually go to the clerk, and then the clerk would be able to dismiss if there had been no citations within the past 12 months. That can be extended. It could be 24 months or 18 months, whatever somebody wants to do. I don't know, wrapped around the axle on that. But then they go into that database as having received a citation. That way they know when that citation was issued. And if there is, if they want to say 24 months, I'm okay with that too. It doesn't matter. But it gives us an opportunity to let the clerk's office, rather than, Captain Chandler, staff, all having to deal with this. And it gives also the officers, as it was pointed out, and I can tell you that this is the case, if the officer knows that he's going out here writing a warning citation as opposed to writing a violation, for them to get out and find out and go through the process of looking at the database to determine whether or not there's been a prior citation, that's labor intensive for them. They don't want to spend a bunch of time on a warning citation anyway, because they need to be out on the streets and about looking at traffic and things that police officers look at. So this doesn't take away the effectiveness of the ordinance itself. It just gives us an alternative to educate and say, if there's a second offense, then you will be cited. So that's kind of the best explanation I can give for it at this point. And like I said, Captain Chandler might want to weigh in there. And
Any other questions or comments from the board?
We discussed this with staff. We were all in favor of it, chief, deputy chief, and myself. After what we discussed, it's been about a couple of weeks and months. It's been going back and forth, just trying to find a solution to give a little bit of grace to our residents who may not know about this ordinance. There was some option of the officer issuing the warning on first violation. We discussed that. That would take a lot of time on the officer's standpoint to have to research the vehicle. Who was that issued to? Where was it issued? Just take a lot of time. I would rather that officer spend more time patrolling for violations than spending time issuing a citation. So we discussed it back and forth, and we decided, how about we keep some responsibility on the offender, turn into an education and grace piece when they come by our headquarters to pay that citation. The clerk will look and obviously see that they're a first-time offender within 12 months. And then so that clerk can then dismiss the citation and hopefully hand over some literature that further educates them on the street parking ordinance.
Commissioner Trevette.
First of all, thank you guys for doing this. I mean, I was actually one of those offenders back when I first moved here. We had a big old truck in our driveway and 36, 38, or 42-foot truck. And of course, I had two vehicles sitting out in front of my house. Did not see that little 12 by, I think it's 18-inch sign that was at the beginning, covered up by a tree as it's overgrown.
Sure.
So, that was me. So I love the idea. However, obviously with some of our neighborhoods that are in my district, a lot of turns, hills, so forth. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of keeping our roads clear at nighttime because, again, we still have a lot of students that like to speed through our neighborhoods. And last thing we want them to do is hit a parked car because, they're used to seeing them empty. Is there any pros and cons to have it, let's say the first 6 months versus 12? Because again, if we have somebody, if it's the same offender, right, it shouldn't matter if it's 90 days, if he hasn't had one in 90 days, or else if he hasn't had one in 12 months. So, I mean, is there a pro and con there, or does it even matter?
Sure. I mean, if you want to be more punitive, you would extend that range out
To a 24 month.
to 24 or 36,
That's what I was thinking.
whatever.
Okay.
But on the standpoint of the street parking, our officers patrol, but we don't get to hit every neighborhood every night, right?
Sure.
They have many other responsibilities, but we also have on through our website, any citizen can go in and report street parking and extra enforcement for that. And that is sent to our overnight supervisors, and they ensure that officer goes out that next night to do enforcement if there's any opportunities for that. So I think what this system does, it provides grace for those first-time offenders, but the repeats that we deal with a lot, it still is punitive to those repeats and still gives enforcement options. And it's up to y'all as a board whether you want the 12 months or the 24 months or whatever.
So you're citing the driver or the owner of the vehicle, the registered.
It's the registered owner.
So it may not be the driver that parked the vehicle there. So that could be an issue.
Right. So the registered owner is responsible for that citation by the way our ordinance is written.
Okay.
So they are the offender.
Understood. I mean, I appreciate that. And it certainly does weigh heavily on my decision, given the chief supports this, you support this. Although I still struggle, we have laws in the books. And once, I forget who quoted this, but ignorance of the law is no excuse. What is the reason for the street parking and why we do not allow it? Is it for street sweepers? Is it emergency services?
Yeah, we have this ordinance based off what the Board of Commission wanted. So I think Ray likely was on that commission at the time and May can elaborate.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The reason for the parking ordinance, we were actually, the plan commission and the city commission was approving streets that were too narrow. And so you park on both sides of the street, you can't get a fire truck or an ambulance through it. And so, and then this is something, remember the mistakes that I've mentioned about Providence? This is kind of where that came in. Also, there were some additions that were made to that, that if an HOA or an individual had reason to be exempted from that, then they could be exempted from that. For instance, I would use this as an example, but it's not been used. Windtree subdivision over off Nonover Road has a wider road than probably some of the newer subdivisions over in Providence that are more narrow and streetscape. So there's an opportunity there for them to have parked on the road and not have been penalized for that. But that's, again, that's not been brought up. That I'm just using that as an example. It's not saying I'm going to do exempt anything or try to. But the 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I think, is the time frame on that. And the thought process was, by the way, I voted against this when it came up because I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, that we're only going to enforce the traffic or the parking between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. overnight, basically. Because, you know, there were during the daytime, if people were on Saturdays and Sundays, were parked at home and were parked on the streets, you know, you still couldn't get an ambulance or a fire truck through those sections. So I didn't feel like it addressed the root problem, the other 21 hours or 20 hours a day. That's where it came from. That's where it went. And this is what we've got. And it has not changed from the time that it was passed originally to now, that we are constantly hearing that we don't have signs out that, as Commissioner Trevette said, I mean, what is it, 15 by 18 inches each other? It's not very big, and people are not going to look that closely as they're driving down the road. And if they do, they're probably going to hit somebody, so they probably don't need to be that distracted as they're driving. If this gives us an opportunity to actually not penalize, but educate some folks as we go through the process. They don't have to pay their $25. What is the cost for a second offense
on parking?
Is it the same?
It's the same.
Is it? Okay. There's a lot of people out here that don't even know that there is a permitting process. They think that you have to come down to City Hall and get a paper permit and put that on the car. That is not the case. Right. But there's never been any education to any great extent that has taken place. And we've got, like I said, probably 20,000 new residents that just don't look at these signs. So it gives us lots of opportunities here.
Sure. And if I could add, I think the ordinance is unique. Our number one complaint is they did not know about it. And we try to handle it as gracefully as we can through that process. But I think this gives us more opportunities to give that grace, but also still ensure we're enforcing it, right? Our officers are still going to be out there and issuing citations. And as we get complaints of areas we haven't patrolled, we're definitely going to go out there and do enforcement on those vehicles that are still parked on the street. Some other benefits to this ordinance too is our officers are patrolling neighborhoods late at night, right? And they're stopping and looking at cars because, a lot of times, thankfully, knock on wood, since Guardian Shield, our car burglaries have been down super significantly. But those are one of those signs. You see a vehicle parked on the side of the street, where's the occupants? What are they doing? And the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., I think, was to try to target overnight parking, not just temporary parking in front of someone's house during the day.
That's true. It's been a tool
Mm-hmm.
for enforcement from a law enforcement standpoint. It's also got the benefits. And I know there's a lot of pros and cons to this, but it's also got the benefit that we don't see. You don't drive through neighborhoods in Mt Juliet and typically see a car that's broke down and got oil leaking underneath it, just left there because they can until the tag expires. It gives us the opportunity to take some enforcement on that long before that happens. And a lot of people too don't know. Sometimes you have guests. I mean, I have 2 teenage daughters. They're old enough to drive now. They'll have friends that spend the night. We can fit four cars in the driveway, maybe 4 more in the yard. Don't park on the yard, but you can fit 4 in the driveway. And if you have that other one out there, it's just a call to dispatch if you need an exception to have some family stay over on that. So it's real. I mean, the city's really been flexible, willing to work with people on it. It's for me, I think the last call I got, I was a commissioner and actually it was in Belinda City where they called. It was kind of a sad story with a funeral and family over and lot of things went wrong for it. But, I was able to step in and help. When I say help, I meant help by money out of my pocket, not calling somebody for favors or any of that mess with a ticket. But, I was able to help the family out. But it comes up, and a lot of times to everyone's point, it is an education thing on it. But the pros and cons with it, I mean, I'm happy with what we got on it. I'd like to be able to find ways to do this if it's would help educate people. I think as long as we can get to the same means on it, that we have our inoperable vehicles stay off the streets. Our police department has a mechanism where they pull in there from 1 to 5. If there's a car on the road, start looking into why it's sitting there. Is there an occupant around? Is something going on? Do we have kids running through the neighborhood, setting off every ring camera out there, trying every doorknob too? So those are all positives. I like it, and I like a way to improve it too. So.
And it still requires the violator too to come by our office,
Yes.
right, and have some responsibility for it, and we get to turn that into an education moment as well.
Having to make the stops probably more deterrent than the $25, just from the time aspect. Questions ago, Commissioner Mullally.
Yeah, on the parking permits, like the mayor said, if you do need, you have a situation where you need to park on the street and you don't have any other alternative, you can call to get overnight parking permit, which I think is what, 3 nights?
Depends on the
Or
circumstance,
depends on
but
the
typically 3
circumstances.
nights.
Because my son has had to get one. He's got this work truck, and sometimes he has a truck extender on it, not a trailer, but a truck extender where he's not able to get it into the driveway because it's kind of raised up. So
Sure.
yes, he has had to get those as well. So I do support this, and Vice Mayor's right. A few months ago, especially, I had a lot of calls, especially in the newer neighborhoods. And I think one of the instances, I want to say it was Walton's Grove, maybe where the signs had not been placed yet, but Public Works did place those. So I would like to see the signs placed, in all the neighborhoods if they're not already. So I do support it. I would not like to see it go beyond 12 months though. So that's my 2 cents for that. So that's all I had.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Not, we're ready to vote. All in favor of 11A4, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 11A4 carries. Next item is 11A5, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance 2022-32 to appropriate funds for the purchase of 620 Clemens Road, map 72, parcel 71.01, being approximately 24.17 acres from Charles and Jeff Roulette and John and Floyd Fisher for the Public Works and Engineering Department and other future uses by the city of Mount Juliet. Motion.
Second.
I'll second. Since the resolution was deferred, I'll make a motion to defer this one meeting to match. Do we have a second on that? Any questions or comments on the advisement of deferment? All right, all in favor of deferring 11A5 one meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is deferred. Next item is 11B1, a resolution declaring the City of Mount Juliet Parks Department volleyball nets as surplus to be disposed of at GovDeals auction.
Motion.
Motion? Second. Questions or comments on those volleyball nets? All in favor of 11B1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. 11B2, a resolution of the Mount Juliet Board of Commissioners to further explain the responsibilities of the Board of Commissioners. A motion and a second. Any questions or comments on 11B2? All in favor of 11B2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Daniel White, I believe, for that suggestion. 11B3, a resolution, Danny White. I apologize. Yeah, I'm sorry. But thank you for the suggestion. 11B3, a resolution approving the settlement agreement and release with Dale McCullough, successor trustee for Jerry M. McCullough for $350,000 for the petition for condemnation in the Circuit Court of Wilson County, case 15154.
This is a resolution.
That is correct.
Motion.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any questions or comments on this one?
Again, if I say anything, Junior's going to smack.
Well, yeah. We do have a confidential settlement agreement attached to the ordinance. So if you go look at it online, just know it says confidential at the top.
Is that correct? Ms. Mark, is it confidential public record?
That was the form that was getting, we dealt with it, so, and the order's already been entered by the court, so. We had the distinction being the Otis case in circuit court, it's a 2007 condemnation for the widening of Mount Juliet Road, which gone on years.
Yeah, this has been hanging out for a little while, but I to explain this, I did call our deputy city manager and I said, you do know you put a confidential settlement agreement out online, and I was just curious how we would potentially vote to spend $350,000 and not tell anyone what we were spending it on. So
Keep you on your toes.
not this resolution doesn't have to be accepted by both sides. Any questions or comments on this before we vote? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Yeah, aye. Yeah,
Confidential.
that is 5-2. So we've approved 11B3, and we've already covered 11C1, which is a discussion item. We did that between old and new business. So our next item on our agenda is adjournment. Have a motion, a second. All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And no one's opposed to adjournment, it looks like.